Begin with what we know. Your brain is a staggeringly complex organ, 86 billion neurons firing in orchestrated chaos, producing thoughts, memories, and sensations. Through fMRI scans and EEGs, we can trace the patterns of this electrical ballet. We can identify regions like the prefrontal cortex for planning, the amygdala for fear, the hippocampus for memory, and with each discovery, we feel closer to explaining awareness. But here's the mystery. No matter how precisely we map the brain's networks, we still haven't found the ghost in the machine. We find neural correlates of consciousness, patterns that accompany awareness, but not the mechanism that creates it. We can say what parts of the brain light up when you feel joy, but not how those lights produce the feeling of joy itself. This is the hard problem of consciousness, why subjective experience exists at all, why it feels like something to be you. Science can tell us which neurons fire when we smell coffee, but it cannot explain why that smell is rich, nostalgic, or beautiful. It cannot explain the inner world. So some scientists are starting to ask a different question, not how the brain creates consciousness, but how it connects to it. Enter the transmission theory of mind. This view suggests the brain is not a generator, but a receiver. Like a radio antenna or a Wi-Fi router, it's tuned to a frequency of awareness, decoding signals from something larger, perhaps something universal. Consciousness in this model is not local. It doesn't arise from the brain's matter, but is instead filtered and modulated by it. The brain's damage or alteration doesn't destroy consciousness. It alters the signal we experience. Support for this comes from strange corners of neuroscience. Take near-death experiences, patients with no measurable brain activity, yet they report vivid, structured experiences, tunnels of light, life reviews, encounters with deceased loved ones. The materialist explanation struggles here. If the brain is off, how is experience happening? Then there's psychedelics. Substances like psilocybin, DMT, and LSD don't merely excite the brain. They silence key regions like the default mode network, responsible for the ego and self-referential thinking. And yet, users report intensified awareness, deep interconnectedness, even transcendence. Isn't that odd? If the brain produces consciousness, suppressing it should dim the lights. But under these substances, awareness often becomes more expansive. It's as if removing the brain's filters opens a wider channel to something greater, something always present, just obscured. Even mainstream physicists are beginning to dance with these ideas. Quantum field theory describes reality as a vast ocean of energy fields, of which particles and people are just ripples. What if consciousness is a field too, everywhere, like gravity or electromagnetism? The brain, then, becomes a transducer, translating this field into usable signals, thoughts, emotions, identity. And when the tuning is just right, we awaken. This changes everything. It means your thoughts are not the sum of molecules, but whispers from a cosmic source. Your sense of self is not a fluke of biology, but a localization of the infinite. You are not just a brain with a body, but an aperture of awareness, a temporary station on a boundless wavelength. Let's pause here, not to summarize, but to expand. Because if this is true, if your brain is not the creator of your mind, but the interpreter, then what is the mind? Where does it begin and end? And more importantly, what happens when the dial shifts? Because just like a radio station fading into static as you move through a tunnel, so too can the signal of self shift. In trauma, in meditation, in dream, in death. Is the you that wakes up the same as the you that went to sleep? Or are you simply tuning into a slightly different stream? Maybe you've already felt it. A moment of deep silence when your thoughts fell away, but you remained. A sudden knowing in your chest you couldn't explain. A dream that felt more real than waking. These aren't anomalies. They may be hints, echoes of a deeper consciousness the brain usually hides. Not because it's malicious, but because it must. To survive, we need the illusion of separation, a name, a history, an ego. But under that mask, Might there be something timeless? Something not born when your brain developed and not gone when it dies? This is the mystery at the edge of science. And as we continue our journey, we'll explore the evidence, the theories, the paradoxes. Because if the brain is not the source, then what is? And if you are not your thoughts, then who are you? Stay with us. But to ask whether the brain produces consciousness or simply tunes into it, we have to step deeper into the mystery of awareness itself. Let's begin with what we know, or think we know. Neuroscience has mapped countless brain regions tied to different aspects of experience. Vision in the occipital lobe, movement in the motor cortex, language in Broca's and Wernicke's areas. We've identified the thalamus as a kind of relay station, the prefrontal cortex as our executive control center, the amygdala as a sentinel of fear. And yet, not one of these structures, no matter how precisely monitored or stimulated, has revealed the secret switch that turns on consciousness. No scan has shown us where experience begins. No electrode has made us see exactly how it feels to be. It's as if we're staring at the circuits of a radio, tracing every wire, labeling every part, but still missing the music. Some neuroscientists argue that consciousness arises from integration. The integrated information theory, IIT, proposed by Giulio Tononi, suggests that consciousness is a property of any system that integrates information in a unified way. The more integrated and irreducible the system, the more conscious it is. But critics argue that IIT can apply to systems like grids or even thermostats, leading to absurd conclusions about panpsychism or machine sentience. Others, like neuroscientist Anil Seth, suggest that consciousness is a kind of controlled hallucination, the brain's best guess about what's out there, constantly updated through prediction and correction. These models, elegant as they may be, still rest on the assumption that the brain generates experience. But what if that's backwards? What if consciousness isn't in the brain, but the brain is in consciousness? This is the hypothesis of the filter or transmission theory, most famously put forth by thinkers like Aldous Huxley, Henry Bergson, and William James. The idea is simple, yet radical. The brain doesn't produce consciousness, it limits it. It filters out the overwhelming totality of awareness to allow for focused survival. Just as a radio doesn't invent the music, but selects a frequency from the vast electromagnetic field, the brain may be tuning into a narrow band of a much larger conscious field. Evidence for this doesn't come only from philosophy. Consider the accounts of near-death experiences, psychedelic visions, and deep meditative states. In each case, the normal functioning of the brain is disrupted, and yet people report more consciousness, not less. More clarity, more unity, more insight, more reality. Is it possible that as the filter weakens, the signal expands? Could it be that the full spectrum of consciousness has always been there, waiting behind the veil of neural conditioning? And what does that say about the nature of the self? If your sense of identity, your thoughts, memories, preferences, and beliefs are merely contents flowing through a narrow perceptual aperture, then who are you really? Are you the flickering image on the screen, or the light behind it? This brings us to the intersection of neuroscience and mysticism. Because across traditions, from Vedanta to Gnosticism, from Zen to Kabbalah, there is a shared whisper that the self is a veil, a mask worn by something vaster, something timeless. And oddly enough, neuroscience is beginning to echo that whisper. Take the work on the default mode network, DMN, a constellation of brain regions active during self-referential thought, daydreaming, remembering the past, projecting into the future. When this network quiets, whether through meditation, psychedelics, or brain injury, people often report a dissolution of ego. Not just a loss of personality, but a loss of boundary, as if the drop had remembered it was the ocean. So what then is the brain's role? Is it a creator, a constrainer, a receiver? Or perhaps, like a prism, it refracts the white light of pure awareness into the colorful illusion of separation, thought, emotion, story, identity. But behind that illusion, the light remains. Let's take this one step further. Quantum physics, that paradoxical playground of modern science, suggests that observation affects reality. The famous double-slit experiment reveals that particles behave differently when watched, implying that awareness is somehow entangled with matter. Could it be that consciousness isn't an emergent property of neurons, but a fundamental aspect of reality itself? Could it be that the universe wants to be seen, and that the brain is just one of countless portals through which that seeing can happen? If so, then your awareness is not your own. It's not a product of your skull's interior chemistry. It's a wave, a current, a beam of something deeper and more shared than you've ever imagined. But what would it mean to live from that knowing? What choices would we make if we saw consciousness as primary and the brain as its vessel, not its source? How would we treat each other if we knew we were waves of the same ocean, frequencies of the same field? And what would become of fear, control, and the endless clinging to identity if we saw through the illusion of separation? These are not just questions for meditation cushions or psychedelic journeys. They're questions at the heart of science and of being. And they lead us ever closer to the ultimate paradox. You are not your brain. But without your brain, you could not say, I am. So what or who is aware of both? To grasp the possibility that consciousness is primary, not produced, but perceived through the brain, we must look not only at what science reveals, but at the cracks in the story we've long believed. Let's begin with a puzzle. When people undergo anesthesia, their brain activity becomes disorganized, and consciousness fades. But in some cases, even when EEG signals show little to no discernible cortical activity, individuals report vivid inner experiences upon waking. The same holds true for certain coma patients who, though seemingly non-responsive, later recall clear moments of awareness. How do we explain this? If consciousness correlates directly with brain function, then any shutdown in neural activity should result in unconsciousness. And yet, the reports suggest something else, a kind of hidden awareness, not easily measurable, but undeniably real to those who experienced it. This leads us to an unsettling thought. Maybe our tools are not yet refined enough to detect all forms of consciousness. Maybe what we call loss of consciousness is merely a loss of observable consciousness, while a deeper, non-local awareness persists beneath the surface. Let's pivot to psychedelics. Studies using psilocybin, LSD, and DMT have consistently shown that during intense psychedelic states, activity in key brain regions, particularly the default mode network, actually decreases, not increases, as one might expect from such overwhelming subjective experience. And yet participants report richer, more expansive awareness, timelessness, ego dissolution, the feeling of merging with everything. If the brain is producing consciousness, why would reducing its activity result in more consciousness? This is one of the key pieces of evidence that supports the transmission model. When the filter is relaxed, the signal shines through. The analogy is striking. If your mind is like a flashlight, the brain may be the lens. Adjust the lens, blur it, widen it, crack it, and the beam changes. But the light? The light has always been there. So what is this light? Some would say it is pure awareness, the silent witness behind thought, sensation, and emotion. Others might call it soul, spirit, or even the fabric of being itself. But all agree, once glimpsed, it changes everything. Let's look at brain lesions and Savant syndrome. There are cases where individuals, after strokes or brain injuries, suddenly acquire extraordinary skills, instant calculation, perfect musical pitch, photographic memory. These latent abilities seem to turn on when specific brain regions are damaged. How does a brain, supposedly less functional, produce more of something? Again, perhaps it doesn't. Perhaps the injury disables a suppressive mechanism, one that normally filters out access to extraordinary cognitive or perceptual abilities. If so, then the brain is not a generator of genius, but a gatekeeper of possibility. This theory echoes Eastern philosophy. In Advaita Vedanta, it is said that the self is already free. It is the mind that forgets. The process of awakening is not gaining something new, but removing the veil that hides what is already there. Now consider meditation. Advanced meditators, monks with tens of thousands of hours of practice, have shown remarkable changes in brain activity. fMRI scans reveal diminished DMN activity, increased coherence across brain regions, and even changes in the structure of the brain itself. But their subjective reports are more telling. The experience of stillness, presence, unity, a feeling that the personal self has dropped away, leaving only pure being. This mirrors the psychedelic state, and again suggests that reducing egoic brain processes leads not to nothingness, but to a different kind of fullness, a clarity without center, awareness without boundary. This poses an elegant question. What if our ordinary consciousness, the chatter, the preferences, the planning, is the narrowest version of ourselves? And what if those peak moments of stillness, of merging, of expansion, are not anomalies, but glimpses of our true nature? Could it be that the brain, in its effort to navigate the complexity of life, inadvertently hides the deeper truth of who or what we are? Let's add one more piece to the puzzle: children. Young children exhibit states of consciousness that are fluid, non-linear, and intensely present. Before the sense of I is fully formed, they often display heightened creativity, deep imagination, and a spontaneous joy. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for self-regulation and planning, is still developing. In a sense, their ego hasn't yet crystallized, and their consciousness is more open. Are they closer to that fundamental awareness? Is the growth of the self also the gradual layering over of the original light? As we age, culture, language, and memory build a narrative. I am this. I want that. I fear this. The brain organizes the world, but it also edits it, compresses it, simplifies it to keep us safe. But in doing so, what do we lose? We lose the vastness. We lose the silence beneath thought. We lose the sense of being not just in the world, but of it. And yet the cracks remain, in moments of awe, in dreams, in deep grief, in love, in surrender. The veil thins, and something ancient stirs beneath the noise. That something is what this episode seeks to point toward. Not explain, not define, but invite. An invitation to stop chasing explanations and start inhabiting the question. What if consciousness is not something we have, but something we are? But here's where the mind stretches, or snaps. If consciousness is not localized, if the brain is merely a tuning instrument rather than the origin, then what is this field we're tuning into? What does it mean to say that awareness is fundamental? We must tread carefully, not to slip into pseudoscience, but to invite curiosity into science's blind spots. Some researchers, like physicist Sir Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, have proposed theories such as ORC-OR, orchestrated objective reduction, which posit that quantum coherence in the brain's microtubules might interface with a deeper layer of reality, perhaps even the fabric of consciousness itself. Mainstream neuroscience often dismisses such ideas as speculative, and yet consciousness remains unsolved, elusive, paradoxical, irreducible. Could it be that our tools are too blunt? That we've been dissecting the symphony, expecting to find the sound? Ancient traditions might offer clues. In Vedanta, consciousness is not a product, but the substratum, the canvas upon which thoughts arise. In Buddhism, the mind is not something to be grasped, but emptied, revealing its boundless nature. The Sufi mystic spoke of fana, the annihilation of the self, as a doorway to union. Across cultures, the invitation is the same: look beyond the mechanism and into the mystery. But let's return to the brain, not to dismiss it, but to reframe it. Neuroplasticity teaches us that the brain is changeable, that patterns can be rewired, perceptions altered, identities reshaped. Practices like mindfulness, mantra, breathwork, and psychedelics don't just soothe the mind, they reshape the very wiring that filters experience. And if the brain is a filter, then each practice becomes a tuning dial, adjusting the aperture, expanding or narrowing the bandwidth of awareness. Have you ever noticed how a moment of stillness can make the world appear more vivid? How a deep breath can feel like the first one you've ever taken? These are not just tricks of psychology. They may be glimpses of the unfiltered. And in those glimpses, we feel it. The hum beneath thought, the presence beneath identity, the watcher that watches even when the self forgets it's being watched. You see, consciousness doesn't speak in language. It doesn't shout. It whispers, between thoughts, beneath noise, behind the stories we tell ourselves. When we silence the signal long enough, the silence begins to sing. But here lies the final turn. If the brain is a tuner and consciousness is the field, then death is not an end, but a retuning, a releasing of the signal from the form. Just as the radio stops playing when it's smashed, but the music, the frequency, still exists. This is not dogma. It is not faith. It is a possibility, one that sits at the crossroads of neuroscience and awe. And perhaps this is why humans have always sought the beyond, not to escape life, but to remember it. Because the more we learn about the brain, the more we are humbled by what it cannot explain. The more we chase the ghost in the machine, the more we sense it was never in the machine to begin with. So what does this mean for you? It means that your thoughts are not the sum of your being, that your identity is not a fixed container, but a flowing current, that your awareness is not trapped, it is traveling, exploring, dancing through neurons, yes, but not owned by them. And perhaps the greatest shift is this. You are not trying to become conscious. You already are. You are not your memories. You are the light that makes remembering possible. You are not your brain. You are the awareness that uses the brain to see itself. So as you walk through this world, as neurons fire and thoughts rise, remember, behind every perception, beneath every emotion, before every belief, there is a presence, not created by the brain, but witnessed through it. And when you touch that presence, even for a moment, you don't become something new. You remember what you've always been, awake. Next time on the Neural Nirvana series, we explore psychedelics and the rewiring of reality. Until then, stay curious, stay conscious. If this stirred something inside you, subscribe, like, and share this with a fellow seeker.